First hour brought to you by TireRack.com, official tire experts of the Dan Patrick Show. Go to TireRack.com/Dan. Try the Tire Decision Guide, full lineup of Goodyear tires, special offers, free road hazard protection, mobile tire installation. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be. Very busy man. He's the Monday morning quarterback, but he works other days as well. Don't want you to think that he only works on Monday. He's Albert Breer joining us from the Combine in Indianapolis. Thanks for joining us. Let me start with tweaking overtime, what the NFL is proposing.
Yeah, so they want to formalize, or at least look at formalizing the rules so it's the same from the regular season to the postseason. And as Dan, what they did to amend the rule in the postseason after the Super Bowl a few years back was to ensure that both teams would have a chance to have the ball in overtime. And whether or not they go to that or tweak it further. I know, Troy Vincent had talked about reimagining the whole thing altogether. I don't think we'll go to a college version of overtime. I do think they want to maintain some of the elements of a normal game flow that you have and the way that overtime has been played in the NFL forever. But I think the general idea is to come up with a solution that would work for both the season and the postseason.
The Brady Matthew Stafford story of skiing together in Montana. Do you have the real story of this? Because there seems to be conflicting stories of this was something that was planned, and then there's another story that says that it was random that they ran into each other in Montana.
I mean, I can say that that is, and you may be familiar with the place, but that's a pretty high-end club in Montana that people on that level of celebrity are at and spend time at. And so the idea that they would unintentionally run into each other is not far-fetched. I don't know exactly how that happened. I don't think that I don't know for sure. I haven't dug into it quite as much yet, but I don't think I don't know that Brady invited Matthew Stafford there. Matthew Stafford, I know, had been there in the past, and so again, not that unusual that it would happen, but I do think it shows how Brady is really a part of what the Raiders are doing now, and Brady, is an integral part of their interview process of convincing head coaching and general manager candidates that it was a better job than it has been in recent years, and that and then ultimately, they wind up hiring two guys that Brady's got a relationship with. Pete Carroll, of course, who he competed against for all those years, and John Spytek, who he became pretty close with over the 3 years they spent together in Tampa. So I think the Raiders are serious, a serious suitor for Matthew Stafford.
But this wasn't tampering. That if Brady
because
invite
Stafford has permission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Stafford had permission now. And Stafford's had permission, Dan, for over 3 weeks now. Like, Stafford got permission to speak with other teams starting during Super Bowl week. So I believe it's either right at 3 weeks or just over 3 weeks that he's had permission to go out and speak to other teams.
Well, what is the market for Matthew Stafford?
More than the Rams want to pay right now, I think, is the best way to describe that. For those who don't know, he's on the books for $27 million in cash in 2025. And that number was lowered by $4 million because they borrowed that $4 million and another $1 million from 2026 to give him a $5 million raise in 2024, which isn't a raise at all if you're just borrowing from 1 year and giving it and putting it in another, which is why I think everybody knew when they made that contract adjustment after a really tough 6-month negotiation that they were going to be back at the table again. And the way Stafford's looking at it is the quarterback market has materially changed. There are 9 quarterbacks making over $50 million a year. And his deal at $40 million per is 50% below the top of the market, which is Dak Prescott at $60 million. So the Rams basically said to Matthew, all right, well, if you go out and see what the market is and go out and see what you can get. And I don't think they use the word trade specifically with him. But once you kind of let him out of the building and let him go do that, go and see his worth, there's some risk involved. And the risk is that the way he sees his worth is going to be matched with the way other teams see his worth, even at 37 years old. And that's what happened. Matthew found teams, plural, that were willing to go to a number that was commensurate with where the market is at the position. And so, how do you put that toothpaste back in the tube now if you're the Rams, who, I mean, McVay still really likes Matthew. It's a good relationship. Matthew really likes living in Southern California, but the reality is they told him he was worth they felt like he was worth X. He felt like he was worth Y. Then he goes to the market and proves he's worth Y. So now how do you reel that all back in if you're the team? It's not an easy thing to do.
The Rams, wouldn't they learn from what happened with Saquon Barkley with the Giants, where you say, go out there, see if anybody wants to pay you that kind of money? Oh, wait a minute. Wait, you're
Yeah.
leaving? Granted, Stafford is 36, 37 years of age, but it feels, I'm always interested when or curious when I hear an analyst go, he wants to go to a place where he can win. Well, the Rams, that's a team that can win now. And they
Yeah.
did win now, and they almost went to the NFC title game. You got Puka, you got a great young defense. You got Puka Nacua, you got Williams as your running back. I don't know. Just feels like pay him the money if you
Yeah.
want to try to make another run at the Super Bowl. Give him 2 years, $100 million.
I agree. But I think part of this is timelines too, right? Like, does the Rams timeline match up with Matthew Stafford's, which Matthew Stafford's timeline is to win right now and to go all in right now to win right now. And
You don't think
um,
the Rams' timeline is to win right now?
well, but yeah, but here, okay, so like, let's say you're the Rams and Matthew Stafford is going year to year now, and you've dealt with this. You've had a really difficult negotiation. Now do you want to set, you're in this spot where you're being asked to set another contractual precedent that maybe could be a problem for you down the line, and you're looking out at the market and you're saying, well, can we get Aaron Rodgers for a lot less than that and bring back the assets that would come in a Matthew Stafford deal? I mean, I know McVay really likes Jimmy Garoppolo. That's going to sound crazy to some people, but I think he believes he can win with Jimmy Garoppolo. So
Okay.
I think for the Rams, part of this is our timeline may not match up completely with Matthew's timeline. We've got a team here that we think can win for the next 5 or 6 years. We're going to have a lot of big contracts coming down the pike. And, if we're in a year to year situation with Matthew Stafford, that's a pretty tough place to be based on what we might need to spend to keep him. And so that's when you start to look at some of the alternatives. Like, again, would it be Aaron Rodgers on a cheaper deal? Now you got more cash to spend this offseason to surround Aaron Rodgers, and then you get the assets, whether it's a first round pick, second round pick, whatever it is, you got the assets coming back to use too. So it's interesting from that perspective. And I mean, shoot, I mean, think about like if the Giants were to get him, now you got Andrew Thomas coming back at left tackle. You have Malik Neighbors as your number one receiver. You have Tracy coming back as a young back. Maybe Cooper Kupp winds up there. Maybe Travis Hunter winds up there. Like that team, I think, could become a contender pretty fast.
He's Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback, senior NFL reporter. The digital spotting of the football.
Mhm.
I, I like it. I don't know if it's a done deal. I'm always curious when I watch a game how random it sometimes seems when the official spots the ball.
Yeah.
Do you think how far down the line do you think we are with the digital part of spotting a football?
I think we're getting closer. I this is something that they're not going to just, do all in one fell swoop. I think there's going to be some experimentation, and I don't think they want to be completely reliant on technology that maybe they haven't been able to do wholesale checks and all that different stuff with. But I think it's coming, and I think it makes sense. It's I always sort of think of like the tennis matches, right? Where how long have they had that technology at Wimbledon, the US Open, wherever, where they got the ball and you can see where the ball hit, Like how long have they had that, Dan? A decade,
Maybe longer.
right? They've had it for so
But you don't have a lot of tennis players in the way of seeing where the ball hits or where it goes out. Where the NFL, there's a lot of confusion going on. With tennis, it's a player is the ball in or out.
right.
You don't have a lot of bodies blocking that.
And I agree that like the technology is more it's more complicated in football because like you said, the amount of bodies out there, but I mean, if it's been over a decade that they've had that in tennis, then wouldn't it stand to reason that they've made enough advances to make it
Well,
on a more complicated?
baseball's going to implement this. The question is
Yeah,
not if, but when. I
yeah.
just and maybe you keep the chain gang as a backup in case the technology goes down during the game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm all for it just because I've seen how random the spotting of the football is.
And it
Um,
does feel that way, doesn't it? Like when you see a guy under a pile, I mean, there are definitely times for me where I'm wondering, like, how the hell does he know where to spot that? You know what I mean? Like there are those, and so it would, I think, to some degree, solve that.
Help me understand the NFL Players Association gives team grades. So the players vote on things from is your team friendly to the families of the football players? The food, nutrition, weight room. Does anything happen? I saw the Jacksonville Jaguars, their grade for treating families of football players was an F. Like an F. Um, like I don't know what the treatment is, but does anything change with this? I think the Kansas City Chiefs got like
Like they're like they're
a
grounding like they're grounding somebody's kids or something like
I
that.
don't know, given timeouts or bad seats or whatever, not preferential parking, but does anything change when the players vote and it's an anonymous vote on
Yeah.
your team?
Yeah, I mean, it actually has worked. And, I think we all like gravitate to the low-hanging fruit. I don't know if you remember, but there was like can't remember what team it was, but there was a rat problem with one of the teams. I think the Chiefs had,
Not
the
somebody
Chiefs
who
had,
was ratting things out. It was,
I, I think the Chiefs had like folding chairs in their locker room instead of real chairs.
but
The
that's when you're
Cardinals,
supposed to win. Then you take care of your players. That's
right,
proof that
right.
you win, and all you do is keep the money. You didn't upgrade
Well,
your.
was it the Cardinals that were like if you were staying late at the facility as a player, they were charging you for dinner? Like, like I don't know, like I there were, but here's the thing, it's like
Dang.
some of this stuff is ridiculous, and I do think like making it public has shamed some owners into making changes. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe that's the wrong word, but I think part of it has been, I mean, look, here's the deal. So these guys come from major college programs, most of them do, where they're in these facilities that are palaces,
Yeah.
and everything is done to make them feel like the most important people on campus. And it has to be that way because in college, you're recruiting kids and you need to entice them to pick your school over another one. And now in the era of the transfer portal, you have to convince the guy that he should stay when he can up and leave whenever he wants. The NFL has never had to do that, so like in a lot of cases, like these guys go from big time college programs, they'll walk into the NFL and their NFL facility will be way worse than what they were than their workplace in college. And there's really, with the amount of money the NFL makes, there's no reason for it to be that way. I mean, these are supposed to be finely tuned athletes that are, measuring everything that goes into their body and spending every waking moment trying to put themselves in position to play at the highest level on Sunday. And so, like, I think there was this feeling among NFL players in general, based on what a lot of those guys had as college players, that NFL teams were falling way, way, way short of where they should be. And I think there had been complaints in the past and they'd fallen on deaf ears. So, they go public, and I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these things improved. I mean, the Patriots, who've gotten killed the last couple of years in this, are opening a new facility. I think in part because of the bad PR they've
Hmm.
taken. The Chiefs replaced those chairs. The Cardinals don't charge for dinner anymore, which I I don't think anybody charges for dinner anymore, which is like a good thing. It's funny that somebody did in the first place, but it took care of the problem on the back end. So I think that's the idea here, and I do think to some degree it's working. Maybe not with everybody, but I'd say the great majority of owners who've been publicly embarrassed by these report cards over the last 3 years have done something about it on the back end.
Mel Kiper, in his latest mock draft, has Abdul Carter of Penn State going number one. Now comes word that could need surgery. I know
Yeah.
he had a bad shoulder. Now they're talking about foot surgery here.
Yeah, so like I think he's going to be okay. Now, and I don't think it's going to affect his draft stock. Like I still think
Okay.
he's probably the leader in the clubhouse to be the number one overall pick. I think a lot of people would tell you he's the best player in the draft. The easiest translation in the draft, I would say. Travis Hunter might be the best player, but this is the guy who you look at him and you know exactly what he's going to be in the pros. But it's a foot, and those can be problematic. Like I think his foot, back, and hamstring, right, are the ones that like you have to be, yeah, you have to, do your diligence on it, have your doctors look at it, and then if you draft him, something you have to keep an eye on. So I don't think it'll affect his draft stock, but I don't want to tell you that, a foot injury, at a young age for an athlete like this is nothing. It's not nothing.
Thanks for joining us. I know you got a busy schedule, so we appreciate you carving out some time. Thank you, Albert.
You got it, Dan.
That's Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback Senior NFL Reporter. We'll take a break. We will give you our poll question for the first hour. But up next, play of the day.